The last several weeks, I think the last 6 weeks, we've been going through the study of moving forward. How do we move forward? And we've looked at different aspects of moving forward, how we ourselves need to prepare ourselves to move forward into whatever God's got for us next. Devotion. We need to be devoted to seek out God through His Word, to be devoted to it, to obey what He is giving us, to seek Him in humility and just have a servant's heart. God, whatever you want me to do, here am I, send me. You know, to look at it from the idea of repentance. If I do what I want to do, I'm probably going the wrong way. We've got to turn around and find where God is and go to Him, to repent and head back to Him. We need to identify ourselves as belonging to Jesus, what Jesus is to us. We need to identify that first, foremost, and only, to be honest with you. You know, prayer, to be able to talk and seek God, to listen, to expect God to answer. God's going to answer. You know, Krista and Carl Parker, Denise and I were in their Sunday school class many years ago, and Krista had a saying, God's going to answer you. It might be yes, it might be no, and it might be wait. But it really impressed on me, He's going to answer. We've got to expect Him to answer. And what He does, how He answers us, we need to be ready to receive it. And then kind of going into that, to prepare for God to work. You know, we looked at last week how Paul was telling Timothy, hey, preacher boy, son, man of God, this is the most important thing. Preach the Word, which was capitalized, if you remember, which means preach Jesus. Preach Jesus. If we're going to be rooted in anything, be rooted in Jesus. Preach Jesus. Be prepared. Be prepared. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Make sure you're loaded, you're ready, you're full, and ready to be squeezed out. You know that there's a time to listen, and there's going to be a time that people just turn away. We have this moment. Be ready for the moment that they're ripe for the harvest. And then keep your head. Be faithful. Be intentional. Don't just go about it willy-nilly. It's not just show up because it's Sunday. It's show up because we're seeking God. That leads us to today. And this is possibly the most, and I think I've confessed this before, and God keeps making me confess it, so I worry about this. This might be the most conviction-filled sermon I can preach, because it is me. It is what gets in the way of Quint serving God. Procrastination. That dadgum Quint, he's been procrastinating a long time. Brenda Lozier's back there saying, yep, I knew him as a second grader. My mom's saying, yeah, he kind of struggled, long before that. Denise is saying, brother, don't I know? Procrastination. And you know what procrastination is? It's when you've got in your mind you can put off today what you can do tomorrow, right? Well, there's always going to be tomorrow. When do diets start? Tomorrow or Monday. And it may not be the Monday tomorrow. It might be a couple weeks from now. It might be after Thanksgiving. It might be in the new year. But we can keep putting things off longer and longer and longer. And then I kind of get a different angle at this. I get the angle of, somebody once said, Kathy, nothing quickens the mind quite like the last minute. Boy, I grabbed onto that. Because think about that. You never are quite as focused as you are in panic mode, right? That is a real thing. So as we go through getting started, I think God's talking to me, and the way He's talking to me, and He's saying, son, I'm serious this time. Start. Go. Begin. Don't put it off any longer. Don't put it off any longer. Because if you, brothers and sisters, if we, First Baptist Chelsea, if Quint Draeger, whoever we are, continue to put God's will off, we lose credibility. Are we going to believe Him? Are we going to obey Him? Or are we going to lose credibility? We're going to lose credibility if we don't do what He says. The other thing is, we lose the quality of what we're doing. If we continue to put things off to the last minute, we're not giving God everything. And he says, seek me and you will find me when you seek me with all your heart. Not just the last 10 minutes. Not just Sunday night before you take a test on Monday. Whatever we're going to do, let's do it all out. And we're always going to struggle. We just don't seem to get things done. Guys, we've struggled with that for a long time, and I don't know if that's generational. I don't know if that's individual, which I kind of know it is. But as a church, we cannot put off starting any longer. The greatest waste of time, I've heard this cliche and I tried to look up who quoted it, but the greatest waste of time is the time it takes to get started. We put off and put off and put off. And a lot of that's because we fear change, or we don't know what it's going to look like. We might get into a mess. We fear the unknown. You know, what's it going to look like? We've never done it that way before. We fear failure. And I'm telling you right now, that is a crippling thing when you fear making a mistake or failure. What will people think of me? Will it be harder on me to get back to where I am right now if I fail? Absolutely. We fear loss. What if it costs me something? Guys, we've got a lot of different reasons that we put off starting. And if we continue to hold on to now, does it not cost us what God's plan is moving forward? We got to get started. We've got to get started. You know, one of my favorite passages in the Bible is the passage about Jesus walking on water. You guys know what I'm talking about? Jesus is walking on water. That is the coolest of all time. I have preached and I have done devotions. I've led Bible studies, my quiet time. I love it. I think it's amazing. I've taught it from the standpoint of, you know, the authority of Jesus. Dude can walk on water. He can do anything. Yes, he can. You know, I've thought about it from the boldness of Peter, who says, Lord, call to me and I will come out to you. And he jumps out the boat and goes. That's amazing. I also preached the other side of it. That moron took his eyes off Jesus. You know, the failure of Peter. I've done the authority of Jesus. I've done the boldness of Peter. I've done the failure of Peter. I've taught that the fact that it follows up the feeding of the 5,000. Man, that was amazing. That was amazing. 5,000 people, 5,000 men, it says, were fed with that boy's lunch and had food left over. And then I think just a few weeks ago I used the same story or the kind of the same section in John as it talks about that people were following him, looking for that next miracle, looking for that next meal. You know, he was a meal train. And Jesus said, no, I'm not. I'm the bread of life. Something so much more than just that next meal. Guys, I've seen this so many times. And you know when you go through something and God like grabs a hold of you and says, Quint, pay attention. He kind of did that with this section. Turn over to Matthew. We're going to look in Matthew's account of this. Matthew chapter 14. Matthew chapter 14, and we're going to be in verse 22. And again, just to kind of give you a little bit of basis, this is following up the heels of feeding of the 5,000, which was amazing. I mean, you talk about a home run miracle, that tickled everybody. I mean, that was exciting. The disciples had to be excited. And this is what Jesus does. Turn over a couple more pages. All right, chapter 14, verses 22. Listen to this. And I'm reading out of the NIV, and this will come up because I might ask what a certain word is in the King James or the New American Standard, because it's going to be pretty important. But look right now. Verse 22, immediately Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him on the other side. While he dismissed the crowd, after he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone, but the boat was already considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. During the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. It's a ghost, they said, and they cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, take courage, it is I, don't be afraid. Lord, if it's you, Peter replied, tell me to come to you, and I come to you on the water. Come, he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, He was afraid and began to sink, cried out, Lord, save me. Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. You of little faith, he said, why did you doubt? And when they climbed into the boat and the wind died down, then those who were in the boat worshiped him, saying, truly, you are the Son of God. Man, I love that. And as I'm going through that again, as I'm this week, I'm kind of marinating on, kind of what God's kind of leading me to have for a sermon material. He grabs a hold of me, and there's one word that grabs a hold of me in this passage. And if you've got the NIV, it's the same word. If you've got the King James, it says a different word that means the same thing. You guys know what that word is? It says it 3 times. Let me help you. Immediately. Immediately, without delay, without any further delay. Immediately, right now. I think the King James, am I not wrong? And it says straightway. Right now. Get her done. Chop, chop. Don't dawdle. Go. Get it done. Begin. We have gotten any number of things that we can put in there, but let me just tell you, he says it 3 times for a reason. I honestly believe he says it 3 times for a reason, because when he's talking about starting, I think he's pointing out 3 things we need to know when we get started. Number 1, look in verse 22. He says immediately. He told them to get in the boat and go across. Timing is everything. Jesus' timing is everything. If he's telling you immediately, he means immediately. Immediately is telling us Jesus' timing is everything. Number 2, he's saying Jesus, remember when they see him and they think he's a ghost? He immediately says, take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid. He immediately says that. Jesus' presence reassures us. And number 3, as Peter Goober, you were walking on water. Why'd you mess that up? Lord, save me. He immediately reaches his hands down and catches him, which tells me that Jesus provides rescue. Guys, if we're going to get on our mind what's on God's mind, we've got to start. And this is the cues to start. Look in verse 22 again. Timing is everything. He is following up, feeding thousands of people. There were more people being fed than were at a TU football game. I try to look at thousands or 10,000s or 20,000s as an idea of what a stadium would hold. TU averages about 10 to 12,000 people at a home football game. And traffic is backed up. The parking is tough. They're not even full capacity. But 10 to 12,000 to me means that. And I get 10 to 12,000 by saying it says 5,000 men. I'm going to say there was an equal number of women and probably some kids sprinkled in. So at the minimum, 10 to 12,000. That's how I get that number. I don't know if it's right or not. That's how I justify it. But the thing about it is, that is a huge deal. We get excited if we have a great service. We get excited when we have an amazing special. We get excited when something's like that, and we're talking about it. We want to kind of marinate on it. We want to think about it. Those disciples were the same thing. They wanted to sit there and say, Peter looking at Thomas saying, you said it couldn't be done, but look what we did. He said, we just fed that many, and we're all carrying baskets out. Oh my goodness. They're just excited. They're fantastically pumped up. And Jesus says, boys, get on the boat. I'll dismiss the crowd. You guys take off. Anna Marie, I've got a question. Huh? Why? Why? Why can't I stay here and kind of, reminisce? Why can't I stay here and get excited about this? Why can't I, do the follow-up right here with the crowd? Because don't you know that thousands of people leaving, it was pretty hard to say, Jesus just say, hey guys, we're done. Head on home. Oh no. They wanted to shake the preacher's hand. They wanted to talk with him a little bit. And I know that because they chased him down the next day. Guys, they were excited, and Jesus simply says he immediately made the disciples get in the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side. And they did it. They did it. Guys, things were already being put in place that they knew nothing about. They already knew, Jesus already knew what was getting ready to happen. They didn't. They just knew it. Jesus told me to do something, and I went. I got in a boat and did exactly what he told me to do. You know, things were in play that they knew nothing about, but they trusted Jesus. Another thing is, what did Jesus do after he dismissed the crowd? They didn't know. They did not know. But you know what Jesus was doing? He was on his knees spending time with God. God, what do you want me to do? How do you want me to do it? He prayed. He got on that mountainside and he prayed. He went in solitude and he prayed. One might say he humbled himself as a man and prayed and sought God's face. Well, that sounds like good instructions, doesn't it? If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven? Well, that sounds like great advice. Jesus is up there right now interceding. He's right there saying, God, if there's any other way, let me do what you want to do. Let me do it your way. And he's talking to the Father and seeking his will. The disciples don't know that. They just know Jesus said, get on. And they immediately got in the boat and they went. Jesus is putting things in place that they don't know. They got in the boat, and by following Jesus' directions, they made themselves available to God's plan. They didn't know that, but they immediately did it. They saw Jesus in a way that said, you are truly the Son of God. Remember that last line in verse 33? They got to see Jesus in a way that glorified him in such a way that they cried out in worship, you are the Son of God. And when they got in the boat, you know what they really thought? He's just letting us get a jump on the next day. He just wants us to go ahead and get everything set up for him. That's all Jesus wants me to do. Oh no, Jesus is thinking big time. All the disciples knew is, he told me to go, I'm going to go. That's the first time. Jesus' timing is everything. Number two, Jesus' presence reassures us. As Jesus is walking on the water, as Jesus is coming across the lake, wow, that's amazing. But he's walking across the lake. And I'm going to hit something that may be sacrilegious, and I don't want it to be. So just understand my mind works in different ways. But during the fourth watch of the night, which, Herb, is that not about 6 to 9 o'clock? Or pardon me, 3 to 6 o'clock?
3 to 6.
3 to 6 o'clock in the morning. So that's early. That's before sunrise. He's walking across. What had those guys been doing all day? They've been handling the crowds all day. Jesus says, get on a boat, and they go across. And the Sea of Galilee was not necessarily a calm place. They go across the lake at night. They go across the lake by night, and it gets pushed a long way because of the waves and the wind. They're working their tails off in the middle of the night, and it's 3 o'clock in the morning. All of a sudden, they see something. They see someone. They see, oh my goodness, it's a ghost. And Jesus immediately says, take courage, it is I. Don't be afraid. You know what Jesus does for us? He reassures us. He absolutely knows what we're dealing with. He knows it's late. He knows we're tired. He knows that we're distracted by trying to navigate this boat across the lake when it may not be the easiest thing in the world. He knows what we're going through. And just like most of us, they panicked. Pam, they panicked. They said, it's a ghost. I don't know if that was common back in Bible times. Now, around Halloween here, we see any number of dress-up things. We see haunted houses. We see this. Sometimes we look for zombies, ghosts, and ghouls. In those days, I don't think they were looking for it, especially in the middle of the water. They panicked. And this is where I go. I don't want this to be sacrilegious, Miss Tennyson, but who was probably the most emotional person in that whole boat? Wouldn't you think it'd be Peter? Don't you know he went, oh my goodness, it's a ghost, it's a ghost. Don't you know he was sitting there going just nuts, roll faster, roll faster. I mean, I can see him just getting after it. And Jesus' voice changed panic into, Lord, if it is you, call to me, and I'll come to you. That's how much Jesus reassures. That's how much we trust Him, and He reassures us when we need Him the most. He says, it's me, don't be afraid. He calmed their fears immediately. He didn't wait. He said immediately. When they went to Him in panic, He reassured them. And again, I'm not sure if that's how Peter responded. He gets a bad rap for a lot of things, but I can just see him just absolutely slobbering and crying and boo-hooing, and his brother Andrew saying, get up. But it's just one of those things that the mere voice of Jesus. My sheep know my voice. I call to them and they come. That's Jesus. That is what Jesus does. When we are with Jesus, we're where we belong. Let me draw a little comparison. When you've been gone for a long time, doesn't home feel good? When you've been away from family, doesn't family feel like it's the way it's supposed to? It's kind of confirming you're in the right place at the right time. That's what Jesus does for us in such a way that is eternal. He reassures us. Jesus' presence reassures us. The third thing, and I think this is again, we're going back to Peter. It seems like we slam on Peter way more than anybody else. Jesus said, come, Peter. And I've got the image of him bounding. Here I come! And you know what the Bible says? Look at right there. What does it say? But when he saw the wind. You don't see the wind. He could hear it. He could feel it. But you don't see it. He started chasing things that were distracting him. Now, don't get me wrong. Walking on water had to be a trip. But he was walking on water. He was going to the one that reassures him. He was going to the one that just fed the 5,000. I get all of that, but he started seeing the wind. And he started letting everything around him distract him from Jesus. And he started to sink. Man, he started out with great intentions. People start out with great intentions. I'm going to do better today. I'm going to do better today. Here's my day to do better. Guys, I'm just telling you right now, we're all going to struggle because there's no one righteous, no, not one. But I'm sure glad Paul figured out and shares with everyone, I can do all things through Christ that gives me strength. I am so thankful that in that moment, Peter thought, I'm sinking, I'm in trouble. Lord, save me. And immediately, Jesus reached down and caught him. Not said, well, you had that coming, big boy. Which he did. He immediately rescued. When we cry out to Jesus, you know what he does? He immediately rescues us. When we say, Lord, I'm a sinner, save me. Lord, I repent, please forgive me. You know what he does? He saves. He reaches down and catches us and draws us to him. Now, I've got an image, and I don't know if this is fair, but you know how when you are really shook, you can't talk, you can't walk, you just kind of lock up? You reckon Jesus picked him up and carried him? I've got an image, and I don't know if it's right or not, but I've got an image that, Peter, come here, son. And they went and put him back in the boat. Immediately. Jesus is faithful. He calls for us. He sends us. He provides for us. He rescues us. He is the answer for everything. When do we start to listen to him? He says immediately. Right here, right now. right here, right now. Make yourself available to Him. Guys, I'm just telling you right now, Archie came up and said, do you know we have 102 in Sunday school today? And I'm thinking, boy, this is locking the horse out of the barn. I mean, it's already done. We're already going. We don't need to do this anymore. We're already doing great things. Have you all ever thought like that? Where it's good enough? Dude, God's got so much better for us. When does it start? Right now. What can we do? Let's cry out, Lord, save us. Let us cry out to the one, I'm scared, what do I do? And He's going to say, take courage, it's me, I'm with you. What do I need to do? Let's find out. Let's seek Him. And He said we'll find Him when we seek Him with all of our heart. Jesus stands ready to reveal Himself to us. Not tomorrow, not next week, right now. Yes. He is planning to reveal Himself to us, and He's totally telling us to get started right now. Guys, I'm excited about what He's doing in the church right now. I am so excited. I am excited about, we got Rain being baptized today. That excites me. I get excited about how the kids and the bus ministry is just boom. I don't think you understand the boom on that one. Because the boom sounds like a lot like a crash. But it's exciting that in youth world, you've got kids not only coming, but taking leadership roles and making sure that their friends are invited. We've got families coming. And by the way, just look around. Thank you. Thank you. You are an encouragement to me because now I know, Lord, what do you want me to do? He said, I want you to be faithful and I want you to start right now. But what about my mistakes in the past? No, let's deal with those right now. What about my doubts? Let's deal with them right now. Guys, what are you dealing with right now? And are you trying to push off to tomorrow what you should be doing today? Let's get it all out in the open right now with God. God, today, I need you. And immediately He's going to come. Let's bow our heads.